Hey, I want to welcome you to our Preach with You Summer Edition, Treasuring God. We're here with Braxton Kieft, and
Good
we'll
morning.
introduce him in a moment. But this is our summer series for July and August. Here's the booklet, Treasuring God. If you have that, awesome. If you don't, these are great standalone sermons as well. This would be the fourth in the back of the booklet. There's spaces to take notes. This would be the fourth sermon if you're going in order, but you can watch these and preach these anytime you want, because we've got a new format that we're starting for the summer that will roll into the fall, where you can watch these on your own time. There won't be a Tuesday webinar. In place of that, there will be a Friday power hour, and that's going to go, that'll be at 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, which is, I think is what time we're in. I'm really bad at time zones, but the link will come out in the email for everybody who's subscribed to Preach with You. And you can jump on and you can ask questions, get help. The goal is that you'd have a pretty formed sermon by Friday. Am I right? We should have our sermons pretty set by Friday. We're not trying to do Saturday night specials here. And so you jump on, and it could be any series that we've done in Preach with You all year this year, or it could be this sermon that we're about to talk about. But there'll be brothers on the call that you can ask questions. You can get help with illustrations. We'll do little breakout rooms if we need to, and it'll be like a little preaching workshop on Fridays to make our preaching great, which is the whole goal of this program. And speaking of making preaching great, we have Braxton here, who's going to make this sermon so awesome. This sermon is called Treasuring the Shepherd, and the assignment that was given out to the Midwest church leaders was to preach an awesome sermon about treasuring God, but using Psalms and a gospel passage, so that we could have kind of a uniform series over July and August. And this aspect of it is treasuring the shepherd, which Braxton has renamed Good Shepherd, Good Life. And I am intrigued. I am ready to learn about how the
Come
Good
on.
Shepherd can give me a good life. And so here's Braxton Kieft. If you don't know Braxton, then you probably haven't been in Phoenix. You probably have never been a part of the church in Guam, because Braxton has led in both of those places. And now he's in Northwest Indiana, leading the Ministry Center church that's a part of the Chicago church, but is also its own awesome thing. And so I just want to say thank you so much, Braxton, and welcome. Excited to have
Thanks
you.
for having me, Joel. It's good to be with you this morning. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate the connection I have with you and with all the other Midwest church leaders, and just grateful to share some thoughts today, and hopefully it's helpful to everybody as we want to do a great job of taking care of our fellowship over the summer.
That's awesome. Yeah, Braxton and I have been in a discipling group called the Indiana Stamp Lickers this year, and it's been awesome. We meet every week with a big group every week, and then just Braxton and I the last few weeks every other week as well. And it's been awesome. This guy's amazing. So let's get into the sermon here. Good Shepherd, Good Life. If you could talk a little bit about kind of your process, your overall goal, so we can get the big picture of the sermon before we dive in.
Sure. So whenever I prepare for a topic, it has to connect with me. If it doesn't move my heart, it's certainly not going to move the heart of the people I'm sharing with. Would I want to listen to me? So one thing that helps me a lot oftentimes is finding a key passage. And for today it was John 10:10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And so zeroed in on that. That was part of my intro, and just helping people connect with that idea that Jesus wants to give us life to the full.
That's awesome. That's great. We focused on John 15 in the month of May with our Preach with You series, Fruit That Lasts, and so that I think some of the congregations will be primed for that. That this is what this idea that Jesus didn't come to make our lives harder or worse, but he came to give us a good life. And it's such a great message. So I'm going to put the spotlight on you here, and then I'm going to have you jump into the introduction of this message. Just a programming note too. The notes are all in the folder on Google Drive for all the participants. And so you'll have Braxton's notes. There'll be a link to this video in the notes, but if you're watching this video, you already have that. And I'm going to add some comments as Braxton teaches us here. So here we go. Where's my, I've been doing this for months and I can't find the spotlight.
Come on, Joel, you can
Isn't
do
that
it.
amazing? It's like, maybe you can't spotlight with two people. I don't think I haven't done a recording with just two people. I don't see it.
It's all good.
Whoa, it's me and you, buddy. Let's go. All right, so you're up.
So for the introduction, I like to ask a series of 4 questions, and I learned this from a tool called Preaching Rocket years ago. If you've never heard of that, that's super helpful for crafting sermons. But 4 questions I always ask writing a sermon is, number 1, what am I talking about? 2, why is it important? 3, what's the most important theme or idea that I'm trying to express? And fourthly, what do I want people to do? When you hear a sermon, what do you want people to go home with? So the first thing, what am I talking about? This is like a tweet-sized summary, 1 or 2 sentences. It's bite-sized. I'm able to capture in just 1 or 2 sentences, this is what I'm talking about. It's important to identify it because a good lesson has 1 point, not 3, not 5. There are subpoints. There's so many different ways to put a sermon together, but people are going to remember 1 thing. And so you don't want to have them distracted by many different thoughts and different tangents. And so for the first question, it was, I'm talking about the good shepherd, treasure the shepherd. And there's some subpoints of that. I'm talking about the voice of Jesus. Do we hear his voice? I talked about Jesus being the gate, a place of safety, a place where we can be secure. And then talking about Jesus being the good shepherd and why he's the good shepherd. So that's what I'm talking about. The follow-up to that is, why is this important? And I wrote down, without Jesus as our good shepherd, we will never live a fulfilled life. It's impossible for us to find it in other things. And so that's kind of something that you're going to come back to and you'll hear throughout the theme of the sermon. And then the most important theme for me, it was the first point, listen to the shepherd's voice. We have to be able to identify, recognize, are we listening? God's always speaking, but are we listening? And then the last one, what do I want people to do? I always give people homework. There's nothing more frustrating than a sermon ends and you're inspired, but I don't know what to do with what I just heard. And so it's good to give, your congregation some direction. Study this out, pray about this, go do this in the community. And so those are 4 questions that I always put at the very top of my lesson. And it's really helpful as I'm thinking and praying and studying out different material. And it just keeps me in my lane.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so I'm looking at the introduction here, and it starts with John 10:10. And then you've got some really good questions. You want to jump into that?
Yeah. So I started off with, I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. And I read an article that helped me. And I ask questions as I'm going through the beginning. It draws people out. And the question I asked is, what if your life was summed up in 1 sentence? You could sum up your life in just a few words. How would you do it? So I talked a little bit about me. I love cooking. I love smoking meat. I love barbecue. It's summertime. And so one of my favorite things to do is to have 100 people over at the house and cook for them. And while cooking may stress you out, it relaxes me. I love cooking for people, but that's not my life. And so people can connect with that. We all have hobbies. We all have things that we like to do, but how do we describe our life? If you had to sit down with a friend, how would you do it? Some other points I hit on is, some people would put their life in the vein of success. Man, I'm great and I have a great job. I'm well educated. Maybe you say your life was stressful. You're a frantic person. We get stressed out in life. Some of us are adventurous. Like Joel, you're adventurous. You do these 50-mile runs. Driving 50 miles is adventurous enough for me. But some people are thrill seekers, and that's what they're wired. Some people have lost their dreams. They're disappointed. They've lost friends and family members. Life hasn't turned out the way that they wanted it to turn out. And so I packaged all this up front, and then I talked to the church, and like, Jesus came to give us an exciting life, not a boring life, not something that we just kind of make it through, but life to the full. And I like taking a passage like John 10:10, and I looked at several different passages in the Bible, and it's so helpful to bring that to life. And so if you listen to my lesson, I'll go through that. But just a powerful way to bring it on home and make it relevant. And okay, this is for me. This is going to help me. This is something that I want an exciting life. I want more than just paying bills and watching the grass grow. I want more to life than that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like people are going to be hooked at that intro. It's a great hook. I think I saw something recently where it said when a man turns 40, he either gets into Civil War history or smoking meat. And so I feel like you've chosen wisely, Braxton. That's good. Maybe you're into Civil War history too. I don't know, but there we go. That's awesome. All right, so let's get into the first. We're hooked. We want to live an exciting and adventurous life. It's summertime, so we got adventure on our minds. Go ahead and jump into the first point for us here.
All right, so the first point is his voice. Do we hear the shepherd's voice? I saw this video, and you'll see this when you watch the sermon. It's so powerful to see a shepherd in action and the response that a shepherd gets contrasting with other people. There was this tour group that came into a farm, and all of them are trying to call the sheep, and they're imitating the shepherd and his call, and the sheep are not paying attention at all. But boy, as soon as the shepherd starts speaking, the sheep perk up their ears, they lift their heads, they start running toward the shepherd, they're bleating, they're excited. And it's very moving to see it, because I was like, wow, the scripture just came to life for me, because I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't know what it's like to raise sheep. I had never seen that before, but Jesus is telling the story that most people knew about. And it was just a powerful thing that, man, my sheep know my voice. Jesus begins to talk about they recognize my voice. They're not going to follow the voice of a stranger, but they'll listen to me. They'll follow me. And so that's a lot of what I talked about in the first point, is listening to the voice. Do we listen to the voice of the shepherd? There's so many things in life that drowned out the voice of God. And it can be good things. Maybe you're reading a good how-to book. Maybe you're helping people.
Good point.
And sometimes it's more the mundane. I'm playing a video game. My life is filled up with so many things, but I think one of the most challenging things for us as disciples is to pause, to be completely silent, and just listen to the shepherd's voice. I love reading God's word. And, we can sit down, and a lot of you listening are ministers. We can have a 1 hour quiet time where it's 59 minutes of reading and 1 minute of prayer. We can feel like, oh, that was so good. But I'd like to challenge you, take 10 minutes and say nothing, read nothing, just be in a quiet place without any distractions and just listen for Jesus. I think that might be one of the most challenging and yet rewarding things we could possibly do as a Christian, is listening for Jesus' voice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, I love that. I think I've seen that video it reminds me with my kids, we would do drills. I've got this little whistle that I do. And so like if they get away from me, like at a store, and they're like teens and preteens now, but I still do the whistle and they come right away. But it was important because one needed to get my kids back. That it's important for us to be able to hear that, and even to drill, like taking that 10 minutes of silence. That's like practicing listening to God. I love it, brother. All right, so you've heard the voice of God. We're trying to experience this amazing life. It starts with hearing God's voice, or the voice of the shepherd Jesus, and then that leads us to the gate, which is your second point.
Right. So Jesus is talking to the Pharisees here. They don't understand what he's saying, and he starts talking about, "I'm the gate for the sheep." And I remember reading that for years, and I'm like, I'm the gate. I don't get it. Now, I'm a visual guy, and so when I prepare my PowerPoints, I try to find pictures that are relevant. So helpful. And I found this picture of this stone enclosure. It's circular. It's made out of rocks. It was something very similar to what I'm sure shepherds in Jesus' time used. But there's a little opening. And some of them did have a normal gate, hinges, and a wooden door. It would open and shut. But a lot of them would just be this circular enclosure with an opening about 2, maybe 3 feet wide. And I read this article. It was so fascinating. A man went up to a shepherd in Israel, and he sees this sheep gate, and he's with his sheep. He's like, "So where's the gate for the sheep?" And the shepherd responds, "I'm the gate for the sheep. I lay down in the entryway. I put my feet out. I keep, the wolves and the wild animals out. But my body is in the gateway, and people only enter through me, and they find safe passage through me." And boy, that helped me so much get an accurate picture of who Jesus is as the gate. It's a place of safety. It's a place of quiet rest. And so I took that idea and I transitioned to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures." And I'm a storyteller. And so as I'm sharing this lesson, you'll hear stories peppered throughout. I talked about a discussion that we had with our house church, our small group. And we talked about Psalm 23, that, David's writing the Psalm, "The Lord's my shepherd, and he makes me lie down in green pastures." And I asked the group, "Why does he make me lie down?" I mean, I like to lie down. I like to take a nap. I mean, that doesn't sound too challenging. But I asked the group, "Why does David say that? Why does he make that point up front?" And they answered, "Because we'll never lie down on our own. We'll never find rest in God on our own. God has to gently lead us to a place of safety where it's quiet, where there's no distractions. And sometimes he has to gently help us lie down. Turn off the cell phone. Stop checking your email. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes we go on break, we go on vacation, or maybe it's our day off. Maybe your day off is Monday. We want to check our email and we want to check our texts and all these other things. And God's like, no, put that stuff away. You need to come away with me to a quiet place and lie down. And so I tried to draw that point out of this sermon. And the last part of the gate, I really zoned in on God restores our souls. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you guys, but I need my soul restored. I get overwhelmed. You get the 911 phone calls. We deal with challenging marital situations and parenting challenges. On top of, I'm married and I have 2 kids of my own. That's plenty of problems right there. And I get burdened and worn out. Man, I need my soul restored. And it's very encouraging and necessary for me to pull aside. And I did it this morning. I'm like, man, I need to do this today. I need to put it into practice when I'm preaching. So I sat outside and I just said, "God, I need you to restore my soul. I just need some encouragement." So I quieted myself down. I could hear the birds chirping. It was 5:30 in the morning. the lawnmowers weren't going yet. There was no planes flying overhead, but man, God does something special when we quiet ourselves down and just listen for his voice. And we're in Jesus' protection. We're in that safe space. And it's so encouraging that God restores our soul and prepares us for the day so we can go help out others. And so that was a significant point for me, that God restores our souls.
That's awesome, brother. I love that you're putting it into practice today, even. And Braxton and I, we in our discipling, we share sermons with each other for critique, and you can hear it even as Braxton's describing how to preach this sermon. He has great inflection and pausing, and so we'll get the video of your message attached to this sermon. And you guys, it's really he's a great presenter, and it shows. So super appreciate that. All right, so third point is, now we've heard the voice, we've gotten to the gate, and now we get to meet the good shepherd.
Yes, the good shepherd. Hey, just a quick point on, I appreciate you pointing out the pausing and inflections. I was not always like that. I used to speak very fast, like I had 3 cups of coffee, and people would be struggling to understand. Go back and watch yourself. Yeah. And it's so helpful to like when we pause, it seems like forever when we're in front of a crowd, but boy, it's so helpful to just take a moment and let the crowd digest what you're saying. So that's helpful for me. Yeah. I'm still working on it. I don't have it down yet, but anyway, let me get into the third.
Yeah, you do a great job. And I'll just say too, it's this is a summer series. It's supposed to be fun, easy, but also, the combination of gospel and Psalms that we're doing. And so going from John 10 to Psalm 23, and each of these sermons will feature that kind of a transition. It also adds some depth, and it shows people that the Bible is God's big story and helps people make connections. So even just structurally, I'm loving it, Braxton. Can't wait to preach this. So yeah, go for it. Point 3.
All right. Point 3, I'm the good shepherd. So this is verses 11 through 18 here. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And if you dig into this passage, there's 5 occasions where Jesus says something very similar to that. I lay down my life. I lay it down of my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down and the authority to take it up again. And I made a sticking point here. And this is important for me because we want to have the right mindset in response to Jesus. When I was a young Christian, I've been a disciple for a little over 25 years now. I would hear something like this, my rebellion put Jesus on the cross. I held the nail, I held the hammer, and there was this guilt pressure. Man, I can't believe what my sins did to Jesus. But brothers, let me be right up front. I completely disagree with that mindset, because that's a guilt-based theology rather than a gratitude-based theology. Our sins are not more powerful than Jesus. And the Bible clearly says, I laid down my own life. No one takes it from me. I lay it down on my own accord. And it's important that we personally, and then the people in our fellowship, understand that Jesus willingly gave his life. Mm-hmm. If we teach it that, man, I held the nail, I held the hammer, it makes it seem like our sin is more powerful than Jesus, and that Jesus didn't even have a choice. Oh, he had a choice. He could have stopped. We know the song, he could have called 10,000 angels. Jesus could have stopped at any point in time, but because of his great love for us, he willingly laid down his life. And that motivates me. Man, the messed up sinner that I am, I'm broken, I blow it, Sometimes I lose my temper. I have an argument with my wife. I raise my voice, to my children. Jesus laid down his life for me, sinner that I am. And that fills me with gratitude. That makes me want to serve him more. That makes me want to stop and listen to his voice. And Jesus has something important to say. So you'll hear when I do this lesson, I made a real point of that, especially for the older Christians, because they've been taught this wrongly. It's not a healthy way to do a Bible study. Guilt is a motivation that other religions use, and even Christian-based religions use. But Jesus willingly gave his life for us. And man, that's the shepherd that I know. That's the voice that I follow. That's the one that I listen to. And so that was kind of my closing point.
That's awesome, bro. Yeah, I love that. Gratitude over guilt. And it's definitely a stronger motivation, the right motivation. We talked yesterday, the Go With God Bible study series on biblical salvation, just how important the gospel is. And the gospel is the good news. And I've never felt like guilt and good news go together very well. But that, I think that is something we can use to try to motivate people. But man, gratitude is so much better. So it's so awesome that that's actually what we should feel, is the gratitude that Jesus would willingly do that. So I think that's going to be a great point. Love that, brother. Awesome. All right. So how are we wrapping this up? What's the conclusion here?
So the conclusion is real simple. 2 takeaways. Number 1, we need to listen to the voice of the shepherd. I asked people practically, hey, you might have to schedule this. If you're married, you got kids, we have busy lives. You're going to have to put it on your calendar, and you're going to have to find a place where there's no distractions. I would recommend getting in your car. If you live in an urban area and it's a big city, it might just be driving in your car, but find a field if you can. Get outside. It's summer, where you might have to take a 20 or 30-minute drive. Get outside of the city, turn off your phone, leave it in the car, and just listen. I think one of the most powerful things we can do this summer is to have those moments of quiet reflection where we've read God's word, we've sang some songs, and now it's like, okay, with the heart of, Samuel, in the Old Testament, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And then just shut up, just listen, just take it in. And who knows what God might put on your heart that day? It might be exactly what you need to get through that week. So that was number 1. And then the second one is let God restore your soul. When you've had that moment to reflect and listen for God's voice, God does something in that moment as you're beside the still water, as you're lying down in the green grass. God's restoring your soul, building you back up. And we need this process regularly because the world beats us up. And so I said, just do these 2 things this week. Listen for God's voice, let him restore your soul. And that'll just help you on your journey as we go through the summer.
That's awesome, brother. Yeah, I think that's so good. It fits so much with the whole Treasuring God devotional booklet. There's a time to take a date with God, and a bunch of different ways to reflect through the different treasure hunts that are in the booklet. I've found that listening, like at first when I started to practice just listening to God on my prayer walks, I'd pray for a little bit and then just be quiet. Man, all I could hear was my own head. And so it really took a lot of work. And so I think, maybe even mentioning that this might take you the rest of the summer to really hear God's voice, or to start to understand the difference, and really the rest of our lives to hear God. But it's such a worthwhile practice. And it is restorative because the Good Shepherd is still alive and active and working in our hearts and our souls.
Amen.
Love it, brother. So good. Any last closing words, tips, illustrations? You preached this already, so we'll put the YouTube video link into your sermon document that everybody we'll have here?
I would say make the sermon your own. It's helpful to have notes. I even have a PowerPoint Joel has if he distributes that, but make it your own, because I've tried to preach other people's sermons and it always sounds canny. It always sounds just not authentic. And so I would say that. And then secondly, take the time. A good sermon takes 10 to 20 hours of preparation. And there's no shortcut. That's prayer, that's reading commentaries, that's reflection, that's ideating, thinking through, personal illustrations, because that's where they'll come from. You'll be meditating in God's word and you'll think about an event in your own life. And when you share something personally, especially if you're vulnerable, man, our churches love that. Man, this is how I sinned. This is how I blew it. And God help me out here.
Yep.
I tell you, every time I share something like that, somebody comes up, they're like, thank you, man. I feel like you're one of us. And I'm like, I am. I'm a messed up sinner. I need Jesus. But take the time. Like Joel said, don't do a Saturday night special. You'll be stressed out. Get your sermon done by Thursday night if you can. I don't always, but if you put in the time early and you block out time, man, it's good for you and it's good for your church.
Yeah.
And so those are just some tips that help me.
That's great, brother. I love it. For everybody who's watching this and using the Preach With You, this is a springboard for your message. And so, but it's like such a full, you've got so much to go off of now because of this video, because of Braxton's notes. And then you get time, spending time in John 10 and Psalm 23. That's an awesome week for you. And spending that time, I think we can feel like pulled that we need to have this meeting or that meeting. And if we're just reading the Bible and meditating and preparing these sermons, is that really our best work? And the answer is yes. That is our job. And we do the other things that we need to do. And but man, yeah, give it the time. And you know what will happen? You won't just write a great sermon. You'll hear the voice. You'll get to the gate. You'll meet the good shepherd as you go through this. So Braxton, thank you so much, brother. The brothers who are participating are going to be so grateful, and our churches will have a better summer treasuring God because of this time. Super appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Joel. Love you back, brother.
Yeah.